Coming up on this week's Royal Exclusive, we unpick the latest Andrew scandal, more Sussex spin and Scone etiquette. Welcome to this week's show, where Andrew's problems keep piling up as fresh allegations trigger a new police probe, raising serious questions for the palace about whether the scandal is now spiralling out of control. Meanwhile, Meghan is dragging Harry, Archie and Lilibet into the world of luxury preserves and scones as ever ramps up its latest relaunch, while Harry is being told he's just not fun anymore. I'm Matt Wilkinson, Royal Editor of The Sun, and joining me to unpack all this are Royal reporter for news.com.au Bronte and Talk TV host Mark Dolan. Welcome to you both. Now look, front page of The Sun this week, a new police investigation, or a widening of the police investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. They're now looking at allegations of sexual misconduct. They're also looking at allegations of corruption and fraud, and they're asking for witnesses. Throw it open to both of you guys. I mean, is this announcement that they are widening the net in the Andrew investigation, is it a sign of progress, or is it maybe a sign of desperation?
I think it suggests that there is worse to come in relation to Andrew, because the allegations, which of course he strenuously denies up to this point, have centred around, as you mentioned, corruption, finance, his links to Epstein. Was, Andrew unwittingly Putin's useful idiot, given Epstein's links to the Kremlin, all of that, national security, it's all deadly serious. But I think the sexual element is the real worry. That's the deepest scandal. That's what will, I think, be most damaging to the royal family, to the monarchy. And I think that's why Charles will be very worried about this latest development, allegations that a woman was flown into the UK to have sexual relations with Andrew by Epstein. And of course, this allegation of inappropriate behaviour at Royal Ascot, one of the big days in the royal calendar, in the same year that the Queen was celebrating her Jubilee.
Yeah.
Exactly. And as you say, there's so much to wade into when it comes to Andrew, because there have been so many allegations and there are so many assessments going on at the moment by multiple police forces. But this is the first time now that the allegations are revolving around the potential sexual offences. So as you say, it's no longer just what we had thought earlier this year when he was arrested, which was, allegations of potential misconduct related to the state. You're now talking about people specifically. So I do think this is just a sign that it's now an enormous scope, and there are a number of things that Andrew is now facing, and I think it just has gotten a lot worse for both him and the royal family reputationally, but obviously for Andrew at the moment.
I mean, it was a huge fanfare when they had this briefing. So they got a bunch of journalists down and they said, we've got some information on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor that we need to share with you, to share to the world, to put into the media. So everyone went down to the police station. We think, what, is he in new arrest? Is it more charges? It's not. They're just saying, hey, we have found some more evidence. We still don't have the files from America, which I think is staggering after all this time. And now we're appealing for witnesses. I mean, some would argue that, they've had enough time, the police, to investigate this. Everyone knows what's in the Epstein files. Why do we need more witnesses? Some people have said to me that they look at it as a fishing exercise now.
Well, I think it could be that, and I think it's PR for the authorities. They want to make sure that they're not accused of a cover-up. They want to be seen to be investigating this. Yeah. Unfortunately, the great tragedy for any alleged victims is they may never get justice. The damage, to a degree, I think, to the royal family is now priced in regarding Andrew. Funnily enough, I've said worse is to come. That's not just my view. Andrew Lowney, who wrote the devastating book entitled, which came out last year, which was the beginning of the end for Andrew's reputation in this country. He said there's worse to come. He thinks that Andrew's alleged crimes are truly egregious, and we've not come to terms with the scale of it yet. But I just don't know at this stage, as you say, if at this point, after this long, we don't know more, then I suspect that this guy walks away scot-free.
Well, there's no timescale on this either. They said that, this investigation will last a long time. So it's nice to have an update. So it's nice to know that they're actually they claim that they're getting somewhere. But you know, after everything that we've heard, I'm still surprised that we're still at the stage where they're still investigating and asking for witnesses.
But it's also, I would say, I do agree with you, but I think that it's obviously such a meticulous investigation which has really the eyes of the world on it, and it needs to be seen to be done right and correctly the whole way through. It is extraordinary that we're discussing the King's brother under these circumstances, and rightly so. But it's extraordinary that it's come to this, and these are the allegations that he's facing. And I think as well it was important because, as I mentioned, there was this narrative, this idea that it was sort of confined to just potentially the leaking of sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein, and now we know there are multiple lines of inquiry that are happening now. So I do believe that it's unfolding as it should. I know it must be a very, very difficult task when they aren't getting those files, the unredacted files from the Epstein tranche of documents. That must be making it a much more difficult process. But I do think that the update was necessary because there hadn't been any more information on this as it was going through, and we did wonder where we were at. But it's also changed the narrative now where we do understand that it is a much broader scope.
I also think, you know, that we've got to that point, Matt, where it's not surprising when there are more bad headlines about Andrew. And I think that'll be a comfort, a perverse comfort to the palace. That actually, here we go again, you know, the public have decided, I think, that the guys are wrong, and notwithstanding his denials of these various allegations. And I think that when more comes, unless you have a smoking gun, unless you have a criminal conviction for some kind of attack on I do think the sex stuff is the most damaging. You know, if he's found to have had his, you know, finger in, you know, if he's been personally, financially gaining, that'll be one thing. But anything of a sexual nature, that will do for him. But I think the damage is done now, and I think actually Charles's great focus will somehow to move on and to coexist with the Andrew scandal in parallel, hoping that it essentially doesn't go anywhere as a story.
How do you think he's coped with it so far, then, the King? Because obviously he's cut Andrew off, hasn't he? He said, Andrew, I'm sorry, you're losing your title before even the police investigation started. This is back in October, November time. You're kicking you out of Royal Lodge. Do you think he's dealt with the Andrew situation in the right way, and how should he deal with Andrew going forward if these you know, police investigations do end up resulting in charges?
I think it has been dealt with the right way. There was so much conversation. I know we discussed it on the show, Matt, last year before the King's statement in October, which stripped Andrew of the titles. And I think there was a lot of fair conversation at that point that the palace had been too slow to act on Andrew. I think it was a slow drip feed of that. But since then, I think that there has been a zero tolerance policy, and we saw it again when Andrew was arrested in February, and the King released that statement back then saying that the law must take its course, and he made it clear that they would cooperate. I don't think he has any particular relationship with his brother at the moment, other than the duty of care of making sure he's housed and fed and safe with his security, etc. But I think that he's doing the right thing, which is making it clear the palace is going to cooperate where they need to. But also, crucially, I think that it's been very helpful for the King that he has had such a good few months in terms of his legacy, because that US trip was extraordinary for him. He was absolutely lauded the world over for the speeches that he gave. Even the nod, what we understand to have been a nod to Epstein's victims when he spoke to Congress. He spoke of the victims of the ills in society. Moments like that. Obviously, this process is currently underway, and he can't be seen to be prejudicing that. But in those moments, and the way that he has created that distance with Andrew and gotten on with the job in a way that people have very much respected in recent months, I think that is as much as he can do at this point. And I think that coexisting is exactly the right way to say it. He needs to coexist with this, because it's not going away.
Is it? We said that in complete unison, which is like a Hollywood musical. But that's the thing. And you know, we're going to come to the Queen later. Interestingly, Queen Elizabeth has soaked up actually a lot of the political collateral damage from this, which we'll come to. But I don't think the public or indeed the movers and shakers in the press are really blaming Charles for the Andrew scandal. And I think there's sympathy for Charles. This is an older man who's battling cancer. He was hoping, I mean, he's waited decades for this top job, hasn't he? And yet the narrative is his runaway son, Harry, and his disgraced brother, Andrew. It's a crying shame. But as you say, Bronte, the trip to the United States was a diplomatic triumph, demonstrated that Charles is a man of great judgment and also a natural statesman. I mean, it's quite spectacular how well that went. But there is a but coming. I agree with you that all of the things the palace did, stripping Andrew of titles, were fantastic. but they should have happened 5 years earlier. I think when the late Queen wrote that cheque in relation to the allegations from Victoria Giuffre, Andrew's sex accuser, in order for that problem to go away. Now, that was not proof of guilt on the part of Andrew, but it was an outrageous moment in the history of the royal family that you would write a cheque, not ask questions. And I think that when that happened, that should have been the moment that Charles decided, when I become king, I will remove those royal titles. He won't be Prince Andrew. I can't do it now because my mother's the boss, and she, of course, devoted and loyal to Andrew. But I think at the first opportunity, he should have dealt with the Andrew problem, because it was clear when he became king that this guy was a problem. And I think that it was a good move last year, but too little too late.
I've had conversations with the palace about this over the last couple of years, and their argument is the king acted the first time that he realised Andrew's story didn't stack up. So the first time it emerged last October, November, that he had been in touch with Epstein, the first time that, I think it was the Sun on Sunday and the Mail on Sunday at the same time, revealed that he'd been emailing Epstein saying, I will play again soon, and all this kind of stuff. It revealed that Andrew's, everything that he'd been telling them in private and that he'd been telling him in public, such as the Newsnight interview, was wrong. And so the minute that he found out his brother had told a few porkies, it's like, that's it, we've gone too far.
And I'm not buying that, because this reminds me of Keir Starmer's provable deniability when it came to the appointment of Peter Mandelson as the UK ambassador to the United States. Because what happened, and it relates to this royal story, but Keir Starmer appointed this guy who had links to Epstein. Epstein was friends with Epstein. By the way, how many careers has Epstein destroyed, including from beyond the grave? But this guy was appointed in this top job, this key diplomatic role. And, it's my view that what the Prime Minister of this country did is insulated himself from that appointment. So, I knew nothing. And I think there's a degree of that on the part of Charles, because, yes, that key information came to light, became public, and then he acted. But how much did he privately know? And for sure we know that his mother wrote a cheque for £5 million to silence Andrew's sex accuser. If that is not a sackable offence, I don't know what is.
Well, what about Charles, the fact that we were in a bit of a tiz on Sunday because Charles went up to Sandringham and he drove to Wood Farm, which is bang next door to Marsh Farm. You can literally look out the window and you could see Andrew doing his washing up if you wanted. It's that kind of close. He went there for a nice little break and we're like, whoa, he's going to go see Andrew. We're told, no. As is always the case, they said he has no intention of seeing Andrew. He was just staying there for a couple of days for a break. Do we believe that? Is the king avoiding him? Are there kind of secret phone calls between? Should he be staying next door to him for a little break?
The choice of holiday location is a little bit interesting, as you say. It is literally next door, and the royal family is not short of places they can go to have a little getaway. With that said, I don't think there is any sort of warm relationship at all between the king and his brother. He must be, at the very least, furious with him. As I said, he has a duty of care for him, because obviously Andrew can't go out and get a job at Tesco or something, for security reasons, but he needs to be kept somewhere where he is relatively safe and housed. So I think that is sort of the beginning and end of the king's relationship with him at the moment. Yeah. Firstly, the optics of him going to see, even if he wanted to, the optics of him going to see Andrew, or it coming out that he was having these phone calls with him, etc., that would be terrible for the king at this point when he is trying to create that distance and coexist and do the work.
He's paying for his property, he's paying for his security, he's paying for his whole life up there. He has got his one arm round him at the moment.
Well, but that's what I mean about the duty of care. That sort of has to happen while this process is underway. It does. Who else, if not him, to be doing that? But then they don't need to have any relationship outside of that. And I don't think on a personal level, even if you take away, the duty part, of course, he's not going to be seen optically. The PR of going to see his brother would be horrendous. But I don't think he would want to. Why would he want to? He must be furious.
Mark, we mentioned earlier about the fact that the net has widened and it's, allegations of sexual misconduct, it's allegations of corruption going one step further than his arrest. I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have any prediction what might happen to Andrew? You mentioned about Andrew Loney. I think he wrote this week that he worried that the investigation, would end up getting dropped. I mean, what do you think what would you predict is going to happen to Andrew?
Well, I think a lot of these allegations are historic. There may be victims, which is a tragedy. And Andrew Loney, for sure, is convinced that there are some grave allegations that Andrew is guilty of. I don't think anything will happen. I think the time has passed I think that it's the establishment. They're very powerful. He remains the king's brother. Therefore, there's a degree of protection. I think that if there was a smoking gun, we would probably have seen it now. I suspect that Andrew dodges this bullet, notwithstanding that the damage to the monarchy is ongoing.
And all he has to do is, if he gets interviewed by police about certain stuff, he'd just say, I told my brother about this, the king.
Most
You're
definitely.
going to get him in the witness
Well,
box.
this is perfect torture for Charles, isn't it? Because he's pulled all the levers he can. Andrew is no longer Prince Andrew, no longer a member of the Order of the Garter, etc., Duke of York. What else are you supposed to do? You can't unbrother someone, can you?
Exactly. There's nothing else at
There's
this
no
point.
act of Parliament
Yes.
that makes you cease to be someone's brother.
Yes.
Although I've certainly considered it in the past. So that's really, really hard. And the other issue, and you mentioned it's compromising, as you suggested, Matt, that this disgraced figure is accommodated on royal turf. You know, it's not like the Windsor estate. Sandringham is the private estate that belongs to the royal family, but essentially the optics of it are that his existence is paid for by the monarch. But what are you going to do if he just lives in a high-rise in central London? You know, security issues. Even Sandringham is rather fragile.
Oh, yeah, we had an arrest
We've
recently.
seen.
Yeah.
We'll
so it's
just
hard.
move on briefly because obviously Andrew's original arrest was in relation to when he was a UK trade envoy and this allegation that he passed on documents to Epstein or sent on emails that he had received to Epstein, sensitive documents that he had received when he was working for the government. We did get some files last Thursday, same day as this briefing, and the most interesting memo was then Foreign Secretary Robin Cook received a note from Trade International Davis O'Wright, who said that it was the Queen's wish, or the Queen is very keen that the Duke of York should take up a prominent role in the promotion of national interests, i.e. the late Queen wanted Andrew to become the UK trade envoy. Is the Queen tarnished by everything that Andrew's done, particularly if we are led to believe that she pushed for him to grab this role which he has now disgraced?
Yes, this is the blot on her exemplary copybook. It's very difficult to speak ill of the Queen for several reasons. She's one of the greatest Britons. Her legacy is quite extraordinary. Her first Prime Minister was Winston Churchill. She was a remarkable human being and a remarkable monarch and a very, very, very unique figure. So we love Queen Elizabeth, but you've got to hold these figures to account. The other issue is that she's not here to defend her record. But clearly the weak spot was her affection for Andrew. It's my view that she spoiled him, she indulged him, and the news that she lobbied and pushed hard for him to have this trade envoy role is a real stain on her legacy, because it was that platform, being this trade envoy, which allowed him to get away with his alleged crimes.
Well, this was the year 2000. This was a year before he allegedly, or as the picture will tell us, did meet Virginia Giuffre. I mean, she's just been a mum, Bronte, I would suggest.
Oh, there's elements of that, of course. He was finishing up his naval career. It was the classic heir and the spare. What's the spare going to do? What's the second son going to do? And I can see that from that level, she was trying to map out the rest of his career, especially because he was someone who was known as a playboy and someone who was looking for a good time maybe as opposed to a serious job. So on that level, I assume that's why that happened. Exactly as you say, it is so hard to criticise her because of her decades of duty and service. But at the same time, now when you go back and you trawl through that timeline, it was in these early 2000s and it was with these decisions being made. And make no mistake, when the late Queen said that she was very keen or something was her sincere wish, it was going to happen.
Yeah, that's very true.
Who is going to argue that? Of course that means it's going to happen. And we so rarely heard that sort of language from her. It was deployed only on rare instances, and it's because it was very effective. And now we know there was no real vetting process for Andrew getting this job. So, yes, she obviously did not know. We have the benefit of hindsight of just how how catastrophic that decision to push him into this role has ended up being, although who knows what he would have done.
But it is crazy that a married father or a divorced father of two served in the Navy in his 40s has to ask his mum to get him a job.
Yes, it's not a good look, is it? And you know, the Queen, she's a human being, was a human being as well, and she had affection for her son. But really, Andrew is a monster of Queen Elizabeth's making.
Yes.
because it all starts with what she's done is what she did. She indulged him for years, and I was really shocked to see that she'd pushed for him to become this trade envoy, because at that point his nickname was Randy Andy. And he was known to be an arrogant, entitled man, not particularly bright either. So I don't know what kind of miracles he was going to work for British trade or the British economy. And there were already concerns at that time that all he would do is chase women and play golf. And in that context, the Queen pushes for him to have this important diplomatic role. It's not good.
Well, exactly. And to that point, it was widely reported at the time that then Prince Charles was very much against this appointment for exactly the reasons we're saying. Reputationally, Andrew was not a good fit at the very least. So it's not even like back then it was, we'll try him out, give him a go, it possibly will be something that works out. Charles was very concerned about it all the way back then, before any of this.
And that's why I don't buy Charles's I knew nothing shtick when it comes to Andrew. This is his brother, and so much happened allegedly on royal properties. It's impossible that the Queen and the King and the staff were not aware.
I mean, Andrew was, what we painted here, Andrew was literally given the keys to the tuck shop, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It was like, you are now allowed to have this job and you can roll around and do what you want. But what I am uncomfortable, and we're friends, but we can have disagreements, what I am uncomfortable with is the way that everything's now blamed. As you pointed out, she's now passed and everyone's now blaming her. It's like a government comes in, they start saying, oh, it was a previous government's fault. I'm not saying Charles is blaming the Queen, but I'm saying that there seems to be this movement. Well, it's all to do with the Queen. What about Andrew needs to take some responsibility? The government needs to take some kind of responsibility. It went on for he was in that role for quite a long time. The Queen was maybe just looking after her son. Well,
absolutely. Look, it's about accountability, top to bottom as well here. There is, exactly as you say, the government, all levels of power. Andrew himself clearly is the one that needs to answer to this the most. But that doesn't mean that we can sidestep the fact that there was a mother's blindness, at least there, with hiring him. With pushing forward for him to be hired.
There's nothing malicious from the late Queen.
No, and look, as a mother myself, I do understand. There are elements of this I understand, but in someone who was so clear on what the duty was over personal feeling, this is where it was so out of step with the rest of her character. And she did build up a lot of great credit in those decades because of her exemplar service. But in these moments, that is when she was blinded by mother's affection and possibly worry over Andrew. And it was a mistake. Although, again, we do have the benefit of hindsight from,
they always all these years. The spare. They always get let down by the spare, don't they?
Yes, the curse of the spare is absolutely right. We've seen the parallels with Charles and his handling of Harry, because Charles has probably indulged Harry for too long over the years. And even the Queen actually bent over backwards to make the Sussexes feel happy when they were frontline serving royals, and the Queen reversed convention for Meghan that she didn't for Catherine. So, there's maybe a familial pattern here. And I think it's very sad, and we all are reluctantly critical of the Queen, but I just think that she was a big element of the problem with Andrew, because she was his mother. She was also the boss, and I think that she should have done more. And here we are today.
The way things are going, in 10 years' time, we're going to end up blaming the Queen for Megxit. We're going to suddenly transfer them around and say, oh, the Queen was wrong over Megxit. I'm just uncomfortable with it. But anyway.
But again, just to reiterate, Andrew is the problem here. A lot of people are surrounded by love with their families and potentially given a lot more privilege, Nepo baby, but they don't go on to do what Andrew has allegedly done. So,
all right, some agreement. Now, time for a regular feature on this show, Mark. I'm sure you've watched in the past. The regular feature where we leave the important constitutional issues that affect the royal family and the fabric of this nation, and we move on to jam. or do we call it spread? I think it's officially a spread. But fill me in. Again, I rarely watch Meghan's Instagram. Bronte, I know you're all over social media and Instagram, but it's now a family business, her As Ever brand, because she has revealed, am I right with this, that she's revealed that her whole family loves her spread? Harry loves the raspberry. Lily loves strawberry best, and Archie apparently likes them both. Fair enough. And Meghan, her favourite is the marmalade. Help me out, Bronte.
From Andrew to this topic. What a swing.
I mean, Marmalade brings up issues of Paddington Bear, by the way, just putting it out
Well,
there.
yes, it's very British. Yes, she has used, the family were brought in on the latest rollout of advertising as ever, and this jam, which I cannot believe how much of our lives has been spent on jam. As a royal reporter, I never thought this day would come. But
You know we could get sued for calling it jam.
spread, that you are right.
And the reason why is
spread.
because it's so sickly and runny that the US food authorities have said you can't call it jam.
So it is spread. You're exactly right. You are right. So basically, she's spoken about the family. You know, there was such a hesitation, it seemed, from her when she first rolled out this Instagram and the company early last year to bring in the family. But now we've got Harry's favourite spread. We've got the kids' favourite spread. And it, you know, as people have pointed out, it does appear to be part of a pattern of bringing them in more. But this is the first time she's really spoken about them in this sort of way with advertising the brand.
Mark, should she be using Lily and Archie? I'm trying to remember their ages off the top of my head, but they're too young to realise what's
6 and
going on.
4.
Should she be using them to sell her jam?
No, they are the Duke and Duchess of double standards. They left the royal family because they wanted to escape the goldfish bowl and they wanted their children to have normal lives. Well, if you want that, then why don't you do what Princess Anne did and not call your children Princess Zara and Prince Peter? And they've, of course, those two, Zara Phillips and Peter Phillips, have grown up to be really well-adjusted people. And Peter's about to get married, of course. Harry, famously, not invited. That's another story. But, you know, this is shocking. It's egregious hypocrisy. And it's what we've come to expect from the Sussexes. And I should really say Meghan, because Meghan has decided to make Archie and Lily part of the brand now. Those posts on Instagram have gone beyond Archie's birthday or Christmas Day. The kids are involved in the anniversary celebrations. They're involved in Halloween, all of it plastered over social media. Meghan makes a speech in Switzerland in front of 11 people who are not very interested in looking at their watch at the time in order to talk about the dangers of social media and especially children. What does she do? She puts her kids on there. So the whole thing is really shocking. It also demonstrates how desperate she is. That commercial partnership with Netflix is over, which was very damaging. And it's my understanding that there are thousands of jars of unsold spread, some of which are gathering dust at Netflix HQ and being given away to members of staff. So, you know, this is where she's at. She's peddling her wares. The broadcast stuff is subject to the law of diminishing returns. We're not going to get another series of With Love, Meghan. So, yeah, it's desperate, it's hypocritical. And I just think it's deeply wrong, Matt, because I think those children, may God bless them, they've not chosen to be celebrities. Yes, they'll always be famous because of who their parents are, but she doesn't have to make it worse by leveraging them for clicks and for money.
Can I just say, I agree with what you're saying. I do think that, as I've said before here, I do think it comes down to the parents' decision of how much they choose to show of their children on social media. But when it comes to Harry and Meghan, but Meghan specifically, I think she's just backed herself into a corner because, of course, so much of the campaigning they've done in recent years, and I think rightly so, has been, you know, this crackdown for safety of children online, etc., and the big dangers of social media. They've really gone after the big tech companies. And this has been a huge part, as you say, even just a couple of weeks ago in Geneva, this has been a huge part of their post-working royal life. And yet at the same time, it's like she's only realised since launching Instagram last year that gradually we're seeing the kids more and more on there because the brand that she's trying to promote is very much a family-centric, homewares, homemaking sort of vibe. And so she's put herself, as I say, she's put herself in a corner because even with that speech in Geneva, something I found, look, the speech itself and the point itself, I agree there should be more safety for children online, but it was astounding to me that the night before she gave that speech, she posted the wardrobe picture with Lilibet, things like that
and
to me.
And it's not Lily's birthday, it's not Christmas Day, it's not even Easter. There was no occasion. It's gratuitous, Matt.
It felt so odd to me for someone who is apparently very intelligent. I saw that and I thought that is such an own goal. It doesn't even, and I just think there are two things trying to exist here, which is that platform and that campaigning over here, which again, I agree with in large part. But then at the same time, this growing realization that without the vehicle of Netflix promoting her company, she is the promotion solely, and that all exists on Instagram only.
It's a family business, and these Instagram posts are adverts, and she's using her family as part of the adverts.
Most definitely. All it is, Matt, is just goes against what she's saying about what she wants for the family. and the dangers of social media. It's not responsible, I think, to use your children in a commercial campaign. I don't think it's right.
Now, these children, Lilibet and Archie, we don't see their faces. I mean, that's a parental decision, but we're beginning to learn more about them, beginning to know more about them. They are the king's grandchildren. They are, the future king's niece and nephew. Always get this wrong.
Yes.
Yep, future
correct.
king's niece and nephew.
And they're going to be prince and princess?
And they're going to be prince and princess. How do you think the royal family, how do you think Buckingham Palace look at this and see Meghan parading them on adverts to sell her jam? Do you think that they are looking at this thinking they need to step in, or do you think they're going to be angry about this? What do you reckon?
I think it makes a reconciliation more difficult because, as you know, there can be no commercial transactions if you're a frontline member of the royal family. Therefore, bringing them back into the fold. Can you imagine Meghan has a face-to-face with King Charles? She's on the balcony at Buckingham Palace with Queen Camilla. Minutes later, the clothing she's wearing is available for purchase online. This is anathema to the royal family. It's existential. They cannot be commercial. They cannot be political. And there's another thing, and I think we can all agree on this, that whilst Meghan has brought Archie and Lily into the brand of Sussex Inc., there's one person that's not happy about this, the H-bomb himself, Harry, who has no interest in his kids being famous. His dream is for them to be private. And I mean, I personally think that Harry was duped by Meghan. I honestly think, it's just my view, that the whole marriage was a con trick, because it's my understanding that whilst they were frontline serving members of the royal family, that Meghan's in Harry's ear saying, listen, we're better than this. We can have such an amazing private life. Charlotte Griffiths, knows her onions, top royal journalist, has said that Meghan performatively looked at properties in South Africa as a potential home for them post-Megxit. Was Meghan planning South Africa or a ranch in California? No, it was going to be Montecito. It was going to be Hollywood all the way. So it's just my view. I think Harry's not on board with this.
I do think there's a reluctance from him, surely, as you say, behind the scenes. You can't imagine that it's something that he really wants his kids exposed to. On the topic of look, it's obviously purely speculative to wonder about the status of their relationship, because depending where we read, either they're madly in love or about to get divorced. In Australia, sorry to bring this back up.
Bronte spent a week with him in Australia, watching their every move, and it's great to hear.
For this reason, because it was, hours on end with the two of them and trying to see that dynamic, because I'm curious about it, because you get different versions of this all the time. From what I saw, they were holding hands a lot. They were, he was throwing smiles at her across the room and things like that. And I did, so personally, that's what I witnessed. But you do have to wonder at this point that, all these years on from leaving the royal family, how their dynamic has changed, because obviously they are sort of on separate tracks, at least career-wise. Yeah. But then again, as I say, from viewing them, all I can say myself is that they did look very happy.
And Tom Bauer, who's the great critic of the Sussexes, has said that he thinks that they love each other. Certainly that Harry's in love with Meghan.
People have said that to me repeatedly, because that was the other thing. Obviously, I then was asking around everyone, what's really going on? What's it like? What's behind closed doors? And people say they're madly in love. So
they have professionally uncoupled. But that's about it.
They've
gone separate ways professionally, but there are huge stresses, I would imagine, on this.
I think you're right. I think that, as you say, at the moment, all is good in the world of Harry and Meghan. But I think that there are these fault lines which are going to grow. How to raise the kids? They are a million miles apart on that one. He wants them jumping in puddles and face painting, and he doesn't want them on Instagram. He doesn't want them part of a commercial brand. He doesn't want them to be celebrities. And the reason why people that are born famous never crave fame, they see no value in it. He was born famous. It was miserable. He doesn't want the same for his kids, and that's exactly what Meghan's doing.
Now, we may have found some kind of harmony. We try to find harmony between the royal family as much as possible. It's not all conflict, as we've been talking about for the last half an hour. It's all conflicts. But we may have found royal family harmony with the good old-fashioned British scone, because it appears both Meghan and William agree that it's cream first and then jam, which quite frankly is the right way round to do it. We've spoken in the past about whether these kind of things are planned. Is this accidental? They've both put out the same message?
I've honestly in the past, I usually lean towards thinking these are deliberate moves. This one I think was a weird coincidence, but with that said, you're all wrong, and it should be jam first, which is the most important part of this. It was funny that William went on that radio show and was talking about how, I think he spoke with the late Queen, said that it needed to be cream and then jam, and then then the very next day, Meghan was rolling out her scones. My understanding is that they sort of build these little Instagram ad campaigns sometime in advance. But I did love that happened because of all the headlines recently. To have William and Meghan, of all people, in agreement on something so important I think it was on none of our bingo cards, but maybe that's the first step.
Well, the scones are culturally significant in this country. So is this the issue that could bring the royal family back together, Mark?
That's the hope, because we know that William doesn't think too highly of his brother at the moment or his sister-in-law. So maybe jam is the landing point. And I'm puzzled by the the jam first, cream second solution. Because my issue with the scone, this is an engineering challenge, isn't it? And what happens is that the cream is like the glue. That's your foundation.
Yep.
And then the jam goes on top. So does your scone not fall apart?
Well, I think I'm really going to expose myself here. But when you say you treat the cream sort of like as a butter, I think that I must put more cream on than everyone else, because I can't really dollop the jam on top, it'd fall off. So basically what I'm saying is obviously I'm putting too much cream on it. And I think that's the engineering issue. We
found harmony within the royal family, but not harmony between you two over your jam.
Dividing
there
us.
are two opinions, but only one's right. Okay. Look, I want to talk about Harry. I'm really interested by this because it was Iraq Day. It was 15 years since the end of the Iraq War, which we lost, hundreds, if not thousands, of people injured and were killed during the conflict. And there was the National Arboretum up in Staffordshire. There was a special ceremony marking it. Of all the royals, it was only Prince Harry who actually issued a statement. This statement was available to everybody, but he praised the courage, duty and sacrifice of Iraq War heroes. 15 years on from the Iraq War, we remember the profound gratitude, the brave men and women who served the country. He was an ex-serviceman, but I'm quite surprised that it was only Harry that came out, and none of the other royals were involved in this.
Well, I think it's also about the lens through which you look at it. So, as you've just said, he served twice in the war and in Afghanistan. And so for that reason, I think he's in these circumstances, and we've actually seen it a bit from him, I think earlier this year when he stood up for the British troops when Donald Trump had made disparaging comments about them. Moments like that, I think it's more about him as a military man as opposed to a royal acting as a royal.
We know that people often can't tell the difference, Bronte. I mean, he's kind of stepping on. The king is in charge of the army. He's the head of the armed forces. But
these are people that, well, not necessarily the people that are being memorialised at this moment, but obviously the people that these were his friends in war. These were people that he served alongside in Afghanistan. They're his community, and this is an area that he's very passionate about. And I think in moments like this, that's when he leans back into that as a soldier. He's speaking as Harry the soldier, as opposed to, as I say, a royal. And even though the king is technically the head of the army, but it's they have such different roles with what they've done with that.
Mark, was this a gaffe by the royal family, whether they've let Harry walk into this open door and become like the face of the Iraq War or the face of British soldiers, when really it should be the king or William or other members of the royals?
Most definitely. I think they dropped the ball, and this moment in our history should have been acknowledged. This contribution of our brave troops should have been commemorated in some way. It's so difficult with the Duke of Sussex now, because whatever he does, given the background of the Oprah interview, the book Spare, all the podcasts, the horrible fake royal tour to Australia, it's hard now not to be cynical, even if Harry does the right thing.
Oh, we struggle every week, Mark.
Yeah, and I think you've struck a note of, a degree of, a conciliatory note to say, Harry is very proud of his military past, and he has great regard for his former colleagues, and he's a patriotic man. So no problem. I think that it's fair enough for him to acknowledge this. But it demonstrates that this is all Harry's got now, because the commercial partnerships are done. His speaking engagements have gone from $1 million a speech to $50K. A lot of the other charitable stuff is very difficult. I mean, many take the view that Archwell has effectively been shuttered now. He's lost control of Sentebale, which was a public relations dumpster fire. All he's got is Invictus and his military past. And with this message, he's clinging on to that for dear life.
Interesting. I mean, we've got Invictus Games coming up next year, and it's definitely an area that he's leaning heavily into.
And unfortunately, Invictus as a brand, it looks like it's heading south at the moment, which is a shame because I think it's a fantastic event.
I think
there are
wait and see this
concerns about,
summer.
the sponsors, pulling out.
Boeing left.
Yeah, Boeing, this is a mega thing, and also the reported cost per participant, how much goes to the injured veterans themselves. So I think even Invictus is not the unalloyed success that it once was.
I do think also, just more broadly on Harry's role, I feel like there's been a real tonal shift from him, though, in terms of what he's doing on the world stage. I think it was such a good interview with your colleague and Jerome Starkey when they were in Ukraine recently. When he gave that, I'm going to try to I'll probably butcher the statement, so forgive me, but it was something along the lines of, do you recognise the term not a working royal? And he said no. And I think that was the best way to summarise it's this sense I've had for some time that he just seems to be a little bit more comfortable with ruffling feathers with the palace if he needs to, but not in the way that he's giving Netflix interviews, but more in the way that he's speaking out on issues he cares about. Undertaking, when they came back from Australia, as we've discussed on this show, that was made very clear from their side that they were unapologetically pressing on with this hybrid tour model that they had originally proposed years ago that had been rejected by the palace. Now, moments like that, and him saying that effectively he considers himself some form of working royal by nature if he was born into the role, and this is who he was born to be. And then again with this latest statement, I think there is something to do with a comfort in himself, that he's sort of happy to put his head above the sand there and make those comments and sort of have that position on the world stage.
But is he fun? And I'm asking this because he always had a reputation of being the fun, naughty one, didn't he? But have you seen Mike Tindall? Was at the Hay Festival, the literary festival, where he was speaking about his wedding, and I think he was with James Haskell. And I've got the quote here. He's speaking to James Haskell, a rugby pal, and he said, "You made yourself an idiot at the wedding. A lot of other people managed way better than you. Harry, when he was fun."
Yeah, I mean, it's quite amazing, isn't it? Mike Tindall. So Harry seems to have really got up Mike Tindall's nose, which is quite impressive because for years it looked like that as a result of his rugby heroics. And I like Mike Tindall. He's obviously a British sporting hero, and he calls a spade a spade. And he's saying the true bit out loud. He's saying what we all think, which is that Harry was once the most popular member of the royal family. He's referring, as you say, to that wedding in 2011, where Harry was, giving it large. This was a fun-loving character. Prince Harry back in the day was someone that if any of us woke up and we were the spare, at what point was he fifth in line to the throne and he's come up to third? Something. I think he was born fifth in line. You're going to party, aren't you? Because I'm a prince, but I'll never be king. Let's have some fun. And that was Harry. He chased girls. He was in the military. He drank a beer. And it's all gone horribly wrong.
He seemed to be like a cheeky, fun guy.
That's a well-reported and a well-worn statistic. More popular than the great Elizabeth back in the day. And but what I'm fascinated by is why Mike Tindall has said this.
Okay.
Because he would not make this joke without the permission of his wife, Zara, who is Princess Anne's daughter. And Zara would not give him that levity if it wasn't approved by the palace and from the top. So, are the entire royal family now viewing Harry as a figure of fun?
It's also such that trope of when men, they have these wild partying days and they're really fun and then they get married and stop being fun. It's in that way, I know a lot of people that fit that bill, but I think he did say the part that everyone was sort of thinking is that, of course, Harry quietened right down in the partying aspect, not in the interview aspect, after marrying Meghan. So and especially from Mike Tindall, who I believe they were quite close.
They were really close.
Harry's the godfather to Lena, I think, who's the 7-year-old, Lena Tindall. So there was definitely a close relationship there. But now, of course, Mike and Zara are very close with William and Catherine. So I wonder if that's why he's now feeling, as you say, emboldened to make such jokes.
Yeah, I'm told Mike and Harry fell out quite a while ago, but they really should be. You would imagine they'd be friends. They're both rugby supporting or, playing people who like a good time and a beer. But that's, people's lives have changed, as we just pointed out there.
I know.
Right, we've just got time for our quick-fire questions. Okay, so take a deep breath. Prince William revealed this week that Princess Charlotte is a Chelsea fan, while he and George are Aston Villa. So can you really be a two-team household?
Yes, it makes it more fun. It makes the nights there's more tension as it's unfolding, and then there's someone who has bragging rights, which is fun, unless you're the one who loses.
It says here that Catherine is also... Yeah, like Catherine is also a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, so imagine the nights when there's big games on. It's exciting. Then it keeps things interesting, I think.
I don't know. I think there's trouble brewing. No, of course it can be a multi football household. My youngest son, I'm a big Spurs fan. He goes to school, he comes home, and who's he chosen? Arsenal, right? And I think, that is the nature of the universe. That he's my eldest son, and he's got to beat his own path. But that said, one trip to White Hart Lane converted him, and he's now Spurs forever.
Oh,
Well played.
really?
Yeah.
I was going to say he made the right decision because Arsenal have just won the Premier League.
It's a good point. He's rather furious this season. But he got a taste of glory. Luckily, it was one of those rare occasions where Spurs won. And he thought, OK, let's go with the Lily Whites.
OK, well, this question gets to the heart of the news this week. So a bird pooed on the King this week. Has it ever brought you good luck? What happened?
My 5-year-old, a bird pooed on him recently on his hand, and then he didn't tell me that had happened, and then he grabbed my hand. So no, not directly, but I have received it still. I don't know if that counts for good luck. If anything, I considered that to be particularly bad luck for me. I don't know if he's had a run of good luck since. I will check in, but that's my one and only unfortunate experience.
Well, my battered Toyota Prius, which has seen better days, was heavily rained upon by pigeons last week. Minutes later, I got an email to appear on this show. So, yes, good luck was bestowed
bad
upon
luck
me.
is the...
Well, that settles it. Terrible.
That's amazing. That's really interesting.
It's a beautiful thing. And of course, now I'm never going to clean the car.
Yeah. All right. OK. Well, we'll have to. When do we time the next invite? By where the pigeons are.
We are.
And finally, are William and Meghan right? Should the cream go on a scone before the jam?
I've made my position.
I might offer an alternative option. What's wrong with salted butter? Especially if the scone is warm and the butter melts slightly.
If it's a raisin scone, that's good with butter. But I've made my position clear. It's jam at the bottom and then an enormous dollop of cream.
Can we
on top.
agree that cheese scones are an abomination?
Yeah, they're so dry. Why are they so dry?
Can I put Marmite on?
Marmite's hot. That's a whole other thing, but Marmite is disgusting. It's Vegemite or nothing.
Well, look, we've got to the heart of the issue this week, so I hope our viewers have got stuck in, and I'd like to hear what their view is, whether it's jam, cream, salted butter, Marmite, not cheese. But thanks, guys. I really enjoyed. And Mark, your first time, but if people watch you and want to see you elsewhere, where do they find you?
That's so good of you. So I host the Weekend Breakfast Show on Talk TV, and I've got my own royal YouTube channel called The Mark Dolan Show.
Amazing.
Right.
All right.
Thanks,
and
guys.
Bronte, you're here regularly anyway.
Fantastic.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks to my guests Mark and Bronte, and thanks to you, as always, for watching. Please remember to subscribe to us here on the Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest royal news, and we'll see you next week.